Welcome, colleagues. Today is the 15th of June, the 112th day of the full-scale Russia's war on Russia. I'm Natalia Starobravo, and we start the first briefing in the media center, Ukraine. We have James Weatherill, Deputy Head of Office, United Nations OCHA, Ukraine, and Anna Polonka, Head of the Humanitarian Hub for Western Ukraine. Today, they will tell us more about the office that we will have in the west of Ukraine, and this will be the office arranged by the International Humanitarian Organization. Welcome. James, here is the first question. What urged you to create this sort of office? What is the goal of this office? Гуманітарна криза в Україні – це найбільша криза у світі. І на даному етапі в нас десь 16 мільйонів людей потребує підтримки та допомоги.
Includes over 300 different actors who are providing assistance. It's extremely complicated. There are many different actors who are international NGOs. There are the national NGOs that are in support of directly working with the population. There is the UN agencies. All of these actors need to be coordinated to ensure that they are able to address the humanitarian needs of the population of the country. So what the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs does is we work with all these partners to analyze what the situation is to ensure that the assistance can get to the people in need. To do this, we have set up offices across the country, and what we're here today to talk about is the office that's being established in Lviv, but we've also established offices in Vinnytsia, in Kiev, and we're in the process of establishing one in Odessa, and also in Dnipro. And each of these offices serves as hubs to address the growing or continuing needs of the humanitarian population across the oblasts throughout the country. So each hub will work with the governors and the mayors in the different cities within the region, the nearby region, and to address the particular needs of the population there.
Anna
Polonka, let me also welcome you to the stage and ask the first question. And if you have already started your work, so what does it feel like and why is it important for you?
Very much. Yes, we are currently establishing the hub in Lviv that will be covering 6 oblasts: Rivne, Volynska, Lvivska, Ivano-Frankivska, Zakarpattia, and Ternopilska. We are going to coordinate the efforts of the humanitarian partners in all sectors. We know that the priorities include food security, cash assistance, shelter, education, and also the longer-term interventions, preparedness for the winterization in the region. So with the 240,000 IDPs here in the region, and also more in the west, we are trying to coordinate the efforts of all the humanitarian partners, UN agencies, international organizations, local partners, to ensure that the support that we are providing and all the agencies are providing is very effective.
Let me remind you that in the room, if you're staying in the room, you may ask questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand and the mic will be handed to you.
Konka Bogdan, again, member of the, You Help Ukrainian Heroes Foundation. Here's my question. As the UN members of the humanitarian aid, what are the biggest problems that you're currently struggling with to find a solution? And at the current time right now, how do you see Ukrainian overall situation? We're talking about diseases, education, food, and money in the next 2 to 3 years. Thank you.
Yeah. I will just say that the biggest challenge is actually the combination of the humanitarian response that all the agencies are already providing with the longer-term interventions and thinking about longer-term perspectives. So just to give an example, the winterization and the access to education for the children. We know that the oblast authorities are preparing schools for the new school year. But of course, the issue is with the IDPs that are located in those schools, kindergartens. So we have to find the places for the relocation for them, for the new shelters. And for many of them who will be staying for longer, this should be the lasting solution, actually. So the other thing is also here the education and access of the children to schools. We know that after COVID and during the war, they had a long period of e-learning. So the oblast authorities and humanitarian actors are doing whatever they can do to ensure that the children go back to schools.
Just to complement what Anna said, is that particularly in the West, that the focus is, of course, on the displaced population. The active hostilities haven't really affected the West, but across the country we have different approaches. And in the eastern part of the country, obviously, we have continued fighting. We have areas that are very difficult to access, where you actually have people that are trapped. And we are continuing to try to assist those directly in their daily life-saving kind of requirements. And to bring assistance into those communities that are near the front line, so as the conflict continues, to ensure that they have the ability to take care of themselves. Right now, we're looking at how can we ensure that we are able to support the population in the winter. They have adequate shelter, they have fuel, they have clothing, winter clothing and blankets that are required. Because of course, as you know, winter is going to be coming quite quickly. It may only be June now, but before you know it, it's going to be getting cold in October. In the medium to longer term, what we want to make sure is the type of assistance that we provide is something that is more durable and more lasting. So you're not just handing out things today that will be gone tomorrow, but also when you're doing shelter repair, when you're doing assistance like providing water, you're putting in place things that can actually last for a longer term. But as you know, the reconstruction of the country will require a full peace, and it's something that we will be looking at in the longer term once we have more chance to look at durable solutions.
Якщо є питання, будь ласка.
Is there any questions, please?
You're talking about long-term and medium-term. Now, I know that UN had a lot of experience in Syria, you know, like Lebanon and other places, and Ukraine is a little bit different. If we're taking a look at Ukrainian children that are currently getting education and want to move abroad or stay in Ukraine, and the challenges that the current war possesses, on a scale of 1 to 10, how threatened the Ukrainian education system is right now, to your perspective?
First, to say that I'm not an education specialist, but
just an opinion, just an outside opinion.
And also not to compare crises in different countries. Every situation and every crisis is reflective upon people's own situation. And of course, in Ukraine, you had a very developed economy, full schools, education system, and have already had 2 years of children studying remotely because of COVID. And many of them not losing the opportunity to really be able to advance. The impact of the crisis, where schools now many schools have been destroyed or damaged from the conflict. Many other schools are being used as collective housing. The opportunity for children to learn in the fall is it's going to be extremely difficult. So I'm not going to put a number on a scale because I think that's somewhat arbitrary, but just to say that it's a huge challenge. It would be a challenge even without the war because of the situation of COVID and getting people back to the 2 years that they've already lost. But with the lack of access into the schools because of them being used for other purposes or having been destroyed, I think it's going to make it extremely challenging moving forward.
Дякую, Джеймс. Також в мене
Thank you, James. And I also have a question to you. How does the situation in Ukraine differ from the conflicts in other countries? What have you been impressed with the most?
Unfortunately, there are many different crises around the world with many different types of problems. I think much of the crises we've seen in recent years, we have enduring conflicts in Africa that have gone on for decades. In these crises, you don't have first of all, for the most part, they are internal conflicts between different armed groups within a country. It's not an international armed conflict like we have here in Ukraine. You don't have a setting where you have to deal with, in most of these crises, the changing of the seasons, where you have to deal with, on top of the basic humanitarian needs of the population, you also have to address the needs that are caused by the changing of the seasons, whether it's just having winter, but also having in some places you also have floods and the like. I think extremely difficult and politically charged environment. This one where you have the Western powers and Russia confronting each other, where you have a P5 or permanent member of the Security Council involved. It means that many of the mechanisms that have been put in place in the post-World War II system of the United Nations are not effective in trying to mediate or to end conflict, making a very difficult environment. Obviously, the world's attention is here on the positive side. It does mean that there's a lot of funding for humanitarian assistance, and I think what you see in this crisis is the amount of funding per person is much higher that's being provided by the donor states than in almost any other crisis in the world. So I think that does give us the opportunity to ensure that we can provide the assistance to the population that has been affected by the conflict. Nevertheless, in the near term, we don't see much chances of anything changing, and that we do expect the continued needs of the population to require response for the foreseeable future.
Питання до роботи саме
And here is the question to the work of the office. What humanitarian organizations will help you coordinate with Ukrainian headquarters?
So the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, we work in support of the humanitarian coordinator and the crisis coordinator, who are the most senior UN officials in country, and they are directly in contact with the government of Ukraine at the national level, with the Office of the President and the different ministries that are involved in the national humanitarian coordination. At the regional and oblast level, we are in direct coordination with the governors and the deputy governors and the administrations, oblast administrations, and also in the larger cities with the mayor's offices in each of the cities across the country. In each of these cases, we work very closely with them to ensure that we are identifying what are their requirements, what are their needs, and we are working then with the different humanitarian actors that are on the ground in these locations to see who can provide what assistance at what time and in what location. I think the key here is bringing people together. It can be very confusing and very difficult to know who can provide a response to whom, and what our main role is to try to connect the needs and the people that can provide assistance to address those needs.
як світ готовий допомагати?
How much is the world ready to help Ukraine?
I think you've seen an overwhelming international response to assist Ukraine. The flash appeal that we issued at the beginning of the war on the 1st of March, just within a few days of the war beginning, was looking for, at the time, for the first 3 months, about $1 billion, and then it was extended shortly thereafter for the first 6 months, so until the end of August. It has received already $1.6 billion. This is an official government bilateral assistance. This does not count the assistance that's been provided by the private sector. What we've been able to track is that companies have provided well over $1 billion, possibly up to $2 billion of assistance directly bilaterally to the government and also to different UN agencies and NGOs to provide assistance. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the overwhelming amount of assistance and support, financial support, is indicative of the amount of support there is for providing assistance to the civilians who have been affected by the conflict. But you can also see it in the level of media coverage around the world, the fact that Ukraine continues to be on the front page news in most newspapers across the world. It shows that the world is interested in the crisis here, and I think the importance is to ensure that they understand really what the situation is and how the population of Ukraine has been affected, so that they can continue to provide the financial assistance so that we can continue to respond and ensure that the population here receives all of the assistance that they need to survive.
Дякую. Сьогодні з нами
Thank you. So today with us we have had James Weatherill, Deputy Head of the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Aid, and Anna Polonko, Head of the Humanitarian Hub for Western Ukraine. And we will have our next briefing at 11:30. Please stay with Welcome. Here is Natalia Staropravo, and we are staying in the Ukraine Media Center. We keep on holding our briefings, and today we have Daniil Menshykov, acting head of Lviv Customs Office, and Igor Matviichuk, Colonel, Deputy Chief of Staff, head of the Border Control Organization Unit of the Western Regional Directorate. Let me invite our speakers, and here is the first question to Daniil about the increase in the throughput of the border crossing points. You're welcome. Good morning to everyone. As you know, intergovernmental consultations of the Ukrainian and Polish government have resulted in launching of the project Open Border. In the conditions of blockade of seaports and in the conditions of the full-scale invasion of the country, our economy is now highly dependent on the sustainable work of logistics at the western border. And the goal of the Open Border project is to expand to the throughput capacity of our border crossing points at the western border. This should be done to improve the work of business that has established new supply chains for export and for import. So the main goal of the Open Border project is to increase our throughput capacity of the border crossing points at the western border. And today I would like to tell you about the first element of this project, which is construction or development of the throughput capacity of the border crossing point Krakivets-Korchova. Starting with the end of of the last week, the works were launched there, and we want to increase the number of cargo lanes there from 4 to 8, which is a double increase, which will result in the double increase of the throughput capacity as well. And the registration of cars, of vehicles, shall be transferred to the new lane, the one you can see in video, and works are already being done there, and therefore registration of vehicles, of course, will be arranged at the highway A4. This is a new road which was built several years ago, but now pavilions are being installed there, and both border guards and customs officers will work there. We intend to complete all those works in the near future, and next week we will open this new way. And the lanes which are now functioning in Krakivets will all be transferred to the cargo lanes, and we will increase them from 4 to 8. So we hope that we will increase our throughput capacity twice. The other pilot project that started today at 8 in the morning is increase in the throughput capacity, cargo capacity of the border crossing point Hrubushiv. Until now, this border crossing point has been functioning with certain restrictions. The restrictions were up to 3,000 tons, which means that only trucks with the weight of 3.5 tons could enter it. But now it is 7.5 tons. So we hope that this will also be an efficient move. And this is an efficient solution to help our exporters. This is the pilot project for 6 months till the 15th of December. And on the basis of the results of that project, we will try to pass some systemic decisions. The work within the Open Border project has been launched within Lviv Customs Office. There's the project related to Krakivets, which will be launched next week, and I mean it will start functioning in the new format, and we will really see that it is efficient. Let me invite Igor Matviichuk and let him tell about the situation at the border. Glory to Ukraine. So, just to complement the information provided by Daniil, I would like to say that the pilot project aimed at increased throughput capacity, throughput cargo capacity, has been launched not only in Hrushiv, but in on the 13th of June. It was also in Ustuluk-Zosinka. And we've already got the first results of the operations. We can see that the amount is increasing, and we hope that we will have lower queues, because unfortunately now we have about 1,000 cars going out. Besides the Polish side of the border crossing point, there is also some work being done to find new opportunities for the Romanian side. And by 90%, we have got the Krasnoyarsk border crossing point in Chernivtsi region ready, and also Yakivtsi by about 60%. These are two new ways, and in particular, we hope that Yakivtsi will take cargo load as well from the Porubne border crossing point, because border crossing point Porubne also has about 1,000 trucks going out. We're also studying railway communication. For example, in the Romanian side of the Zakarpattia region, we are restoring the track and throughput capacity in the direction Dilova, Tarasova. These were the border crossing points that used to exist but were terminated. Also, we can see some increase in the passenger trains. Some additional trains are going through Mostiska too. And now, besides two intercity trains, Kyiv-Przemysl, we also have Zaporizhia-Przemysl, and some additional carriages going to Odessa. So all in all, we can see the increase. And over the recent months and a half, thanks to our active cooperation with our Polish partners and the state customs service, we have already increased throughput capacity up to by about 30 or 40% as far as trucks are concerned. This is because of additional staff working there and the Polish quarantine services, first of all. So this really yields a sudden effect. As far as all the other aspects of working at the border are concerned, let me also tell a couple of things about the information people dealing with humanitarian aid need. This is the information about crossing the border using the Shlach system. We have the requirements of the cabinet. This is Resolution 516 with amendments which were made public on the 25th of May. So starting with the 25th of May, besides the availability of the person in the Shlach system, you also need to show the inspector, the border guard, or the customs officer the decision of a certain military regional administration or the Ministry of Infrastructure that you have got the permission, and you have to confirm your goal. This is not an additional barrier for volunteers, but an additional barrier for those who abuse the system. Thank you, Igor. Let me once again invite Daniil, and let me ask what the customs office does to export Ukrainian goods, and how do you deal with trucks? Well, let me share some figures with you, because figures show that business and economy are trying to readjust to the new reality of the wartime, and logistic chains are being reformatted. And let's have a look at the efficacy of all this work in May. So Lviv Customs Office made 2,150,000,000 hryvnias to the state budget over May, and this is a really impressive figure, because you know that there is exemption from VAT, excise duty payment for almost all imported goods, but we can see that trucks keep going and the revenues are great. As far as a fuel import to the country and the fuel crisis is concerned, well, in the first decades of March, we could see that Lviv Customs Office border crossing points had from 2 to 20 fuel systems, fuel trucks coming. Now it is about 127, so the increase is about 400 times, and this is also impressive. So I hope that the crisis will soon be over. As far as export of goods is concerned, we can also see some positive dynamics there. And starting with the 1st of March, we used to have about 300 declarations, but now in June we have 1,500 of export declarations, which shows that business has already readjusted its processes. And business is trying to readjust to the wartime and work to the full. And the last figure I would like to mention, since it's also impressive, this is the comparison of export and import operations and of the year 2021 and 2022. Well, in May 2021, the Lviv Customs Office registered 21,500 import declarations. In May 2022, this is 37,000 customs declarations, which is the increase by 173%. And over 14 days of June, the number of customs and import operations in 2021 was 10,000, well, now it is 17. The increase by 160%. So we can really see that business and the economy are readjusting. They are recovering, and the Lviv Customs Office is doing its best to really be an effective partner of business. Because in that way, we really have to rebuff the enemy in the east of the country, but also here we need to do our best for the economy to survive, to start working, to get relaunched, and to have the economic victory as well. Let me mention, colleagues, that in case you have any questions, you raise your hand and the microphone will be given to you. Please, we do have a question. Sviatoslav Trapchuk, Pershий Західний TV channel. Here is the question to Daniil. Concerning the Krakowicz-Korchova border crossing point, you mentioned that there will be 8 lanes only for cargo. So this means that already now people cannot go there by car. Well, let me tell you in detail what is happening there. In Krakowicz-Korchova, there are 4 cargo lanes now. In parallel with that, in the new way, we are opening a new path, a new lane for cars, motor cars. While the works are being performed, nobody actually feels this, and neither drivers of trucks or drivers of cars. But the moment, and I hope this will happen next week, the moment this new way will be launched, all the cars will be shifted to that way, but side by side with that, 4 new cargo lanes will be opened in Krakowicz. So that will happen step by step. At first, motor vehicles will be shifted to the other way, and then next week, 4 lanes will be opened for cargo. So nobody will be affected by that. Did I get you right that when these 4 additional lanes start functioning, motor vehicles will actually not go to Korchova? Well, this new way is located at the distance of 100 meters from the current Krakowicz-Korchova border crossing points. So it will also be included into Krakowicz-Korchova, but the movement will be in a slightly different direction. Thank you. The question to Igor, I guess, right? I would like to probably add, on the Polish side, in 2016, they built the passenger terminal with 6 additional lanes. I mean that Polish people were ready for that starting with 2016. And Ukraine was supposed to build this new way, but taking into account the reality, we will not be able to fulfill our commitment to the partners. So we passed the decision, this was actually the governmental decision, to have some temporary modules. We will have 6 of them, the same number as they have in the Polish side. So our task is to at least have the same throughput capacity for motor vehicles and to increase the throughput capacity for trucks. Igor, the next question is to you. What could we expect? What changes could we expect in the rules for children living abroad? Yeah, it's an important question because summer has come and we've got some addresses concerning this issue. So, taking into account the fact that there is a resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers that does not presuppose such an option as crossing the border under martial law, the government has introduced changes. This was done on the 10th of June, Resolution 661, and it explicates the procedure for border crossing. So to cross the border, the procedure is facilitated because the social service will actually check all the documents when children cross the border in organized groups. This will be checked and verified via regional military administrations, and with the hosting organizations, we will have contacts with our diplomatic and consular organizations. We will check the conditions where children stay there, and this is not only related to status children, but to children who are going there within organized groups. So when there is an approval of the leaving of those children, we will check the information, we'll pay special attention to it. So special attention now should be paid to cooperation with the National Social Service of Ukraine, where you can get this approval. So not to go into detail of the resolution, this is the key thing. The other thing I would like to remind you of is that it's generally difficult for children to cross the border under martial law. So over this period, a child can cross the border with one of the parents, the father or the mother, a grandmother or a grandfather, or the brother or sister who has come of age, or step parents. If the child crosses the border with somebody else, there must be the consent of one of the parents, but it should be certified by their care facilities, not by the notaries, or by the notary, but then it should be certified by both parents, confirmed by both parents. Thank you. So we have had Daniil Menshykov, acting head of Lviv Customs Office, and Igor Matviichuk, Colonel, Deputy Chief of Staff, head of the Border Control Organization Unit of the Western Regional Directorate. And our next briefing will come at noon, and this is will be Volodymyr Trush, head of Ternopil Regional Military Administration. Stay with us. Welcome. We'll continue our briefings. We're staying in Ukraine Media Center, and here is Natalia Starobravo. And we have Volodymyr Trush, head of Ternopil Oblast Military Administration, with us. Welcome. And the first question is about the current situation and about the consequences of missile strikes in Ternopil region, particularly in Chortkiv. Good afternoon, studio. Good afternoon, Natalia. The situation the same as during the missile strikes is always the same. We have a war in Ukraine and we cannot but treat it seriously. After Saturday's events, when four missiles hit a residential quarter in Chortkiv, definitely people have started treating the air alarm sirens more seriously. And this is the grief, the problem that we had uh, can actually affect anybody in Chortkiv. 23 people or 21 person affected, and one girl who tried to flee to our region, to Ternopil region, which was considered to be safe, and she was affected by the missile strike in Chortkiv. Nobody could even think of that. The girl feels fine. Medical aid has been provided to her with some surgical surgery, but she is now at home. 8 people are still in hospital and they are being provided medical care. Other people are staying in their buildings in case this can be called their buildings, because normally now a great number of families, which is about 37 out of the overall number of buildings and apartments, are not fit for built for living. So people are staying with their relatives. So we have provided them some places in the dormitories, in the hostels. What is your assessment of the condition of the buildings and the damages caused by the strike, and when are you going to recover the infrastructure? Well, currently we have a commission working. This is the commission created by the local self-government bodies. It includes experts, it includes military administration representatives and the housing service members, and they are assessing the damages. It was not possible to do it overnight because the investigate group had to work at that place. It took some time, about 24 hours. All the facts had to be documented because we considered this to be a crime against humanity and against civilians, since civilians were affected. That's why the commission, by the end of the week, will probably give the figure, the amount of damages, but almost 400 families have addressed us for damage reimbursement, and 37 apartments and have already been examined. 11 businesses have been also already examined. Well, the minimum losses are broken windows, broken doors, but that will be restored rather quickly. That will not constitute a major problem. We will do it with the help of the self-government authorities, and also we have the reserve fund, regional reserve fund, which will be provided to Chortkiv community, and we will do reconstruction from at the expense of this money. Definitely, as far as the buildings that have almost been fully destroyed cannot be repaired, that will be a long and tedious procedure, but we will start working at this. And the first thing we did was to cover the windows with something, or where it is possible to install window panes as soon as possible. We are doing this, and I think that this week will be spent on documenting and recording, but the next week there will come some steps dedicated to recovery. What about the work of humanitarian headquarters in the region? Do you provide assistance to IDPs, and is the region ready to provide this assistance? You know, since the beginning of the war, we have been positioning ourselves as a safe rear, and that is partially so. That is, well, not a safe, but a reliable rear. And we decided to first of all help residents from Kharkiv region. And starting with the 24th of February, we handed over more than 400,000 rations, food rations, to Kharkiv region residents, and this were the rations created at the expense of money of different donations of charitable funds. And this was not only about food, that was also about clothes and other things, other essentials. We also do not forget about IDPs who are staying in our region. Currently, we have about 84,000 IDPs who had lost their chance to live in their regions, in their homes, and they are staying in our region. So definitely we are providing help to them. Mainly, we provide free of charge accommodation. We provide uh, food for IDPs, and we try to find some employment for them. About 200 people have already found their jobs in Ternopil region and keep working. We also help children with kindergartens, because from the 60,000 of children, 40 of those displaced persons who are staying, 84,000 are staying in the region. We have about 40,000 children, and as far as simplified external independent evaluation is concerned, well, they also need help with this. And we have a great increase in the number of people in our region who will be passing this multiple subject test. We are working round the clock, and all the people addressing us, all the IDPs are provided help. And it doesn't mean whether we speak about financial assistance or support or settling of some global issues related to their life and accommodation. We all are working at this. But at the same time, we can see that the region had 106,000 of IDPs. Now we have 84,000 or 86, because there are some variations, which means that 20,000 have already left. This is resulting from the fact that Kharkiv has started hosting its people, and people have started leaving. We have 487 families staying in our region who have no place to go because their houses have been destroyed, fully destroyed, so they will keep staying here. We realize that this is a long procedure for a long time, so we're trying to provide accommodation for them. We arrange rooms for them in the hospitals for them to have a decent living place. Volodymyr, what about the sowing campaign in the region in the conditions of the war, and what are your forecasts concerning the crop yield, and what do farmers tell you? Starting with the first days of the war, it so happened that it was February and March, uh, and these are the months when our agrarians, because we are the agrarian region, so our agrarians, our farmers started working. We needed fuel for the sowing campaign, and we know how difficult it was at the beginning. We have settled this issue, and the region has sown more than 115% of what had been planned. So we had even a larger sowing campaign than planned. But the structure of the sowing campaign changed because probably it was majorly sunflower and some other crops. So we realized that currently in the south that will be very difficult to do it, and sometimes even impossible. That's why our farmers reformatted their structure of their crops. They decided to rotate crops. We have fully arranged this sowing campaign. It is already completed, and now we're working at collecting the crop yield. So we are getting ready with fuel, with equipment, with machinery, because one of the concerns for farmers is, of course, machinery. Trucks, lorries that unfortunately sometimes are used for mobilization purposes, for military purposes, but still the farmers are treat this very consciously. They realize why that it is necessary, and they're trying to bring in new machinery to gather their harvest. The concern also is that the farmers have not fully shipped the grain in their warehousing facilities, and that is a major problem, which is now being settled by the government and by the government of Ukraine and by the whole world. I would say we were export oriented in terms of cereals, and about 80% of our cereals were meant for export. Now farmers start working with some processing plans, and we in this way add some value to our budgets. So that is still a concern because, you know, the ports are closed and this is the global problem. Thank you. So this has been Volodymyr Trush, head of Ternopil military, regional military administration. That's all for today. Follow our announcements on the resources of Ukraine Media Center. Let's stay together because we have come one day closer